For 20 years, the Cassini spacecraft traced an invisible path around one of the most enigmatic worlds in our solar system. It slipped silently through Saturn's shadow, its camera eyes capturing storms the size of continents, moons carved with ice and stone, and rings so delicate they looked like whispers of light stretched across the void. In public, the mission was hailed as one of the most successful in the history of planetary exploration. The images were breathtaking, the science groundbreaking. Saturn's moons were revealed in astonishing detail, its atmosphere mapped, its rings measured and studied. That's the part we were meant to see. What we weren't told, what never made it to glossy press releases or headline news, was that Cassini's cameras, sensors, and recorders also brought back something else. Strange anomalies. Shapes too precise to be natural. Movements too intentional to be coincidence. Entire packets of data quietly shelved, marked for internal review, and never spoken of again. In its final years, the spacecraft began returning information that didn't just challenge our understanding of Saturn, it unsettled the very people studying it. This was no longer just a gas giant surrounded by frozen debris. There were hints of structure, of patterns far older than the planet itself. Some of Cassini's final transmissions left the scientists with a chilling thought. Maybe Saturn wasn't entirely alone. On July 19, 2013, Cassini captured an image that became one of the most iconic in astronomy. Earth, more than 1 billion kilometers away, cradled beneath Saturn's glowing rings. It was a small blue dot against the backdrop of deep space, so distant you could cover it with a fingertip. The day the Earth smiled, they called it. The world loved it. But hidden in the raw, unprocessed data was something else entirely. In the space between the shimmering arcs of ice and rock, there was a shadow. Thin. Vertical. Motionless. It appeared in 3 separate frames, taken from 3 slightly different angles. At first, analysts thought it might be the elongated shadow of a small moonlet. But the geometry didn't fit. It was too straight, too precise. It didn't taper like a natural shadow should. It stood upright, perfectly vertical, anchored in the outer B ring as if it were fixed there. Later analysis suggested that if it were a physical object, it would be nearly 20 kilometers tall. Subsequent frames showed it was gone. In the version of the image released to the public, the area containing the shadow was cropped and replaced with a cleaned, reprocessed section. The official explanation was a light artifact. But in the mission's internal archives, the original still sits, unaltered, its dark pillar cutting through Saturn's luminous rings. Cassini visited many moons during its mission, but none more intriguing than Enceladus. Barely 500 kilometers across, this icy world gleams like a shard of glass against the blackness of space. From fractures near its south pole, enormous geysers of water vapor erupt, blasting into space and hinting at a liquid ocean beneath the frozen crust. These plumes have fascinated scientists for years. They mean the ocean is warm enough, active enough, to vent into space, a tantalizing possibility for alien life. But on one of Cassini's later flybys, its instruments recorded something they didn't expect. As the spacecraft approached, Saturn's magnetic field shifted. It wasn't the kind of deflection Enceladus normally caused. This was sharper, more localized, almost as if the field lines had been nudged deliberately. And at the exact same time, Cassini's infrared sensors recorded a sudden spike in temperature, not from the usual plume vents, but from a smooth, unbroken sheet of ice on the surface. It was subtle, but it was there, a patch of heat blooming where no heat should be, lasting exactly 12 minutes before disappearing without trace. The easy explanation was internal heating from some geological source. But others on the mission quietly wondered, what if it wasn't geology at all? What if something beneath the surface had noticed Cassini's approach, and reacted? Saturn's north pole is crowned by a storm unlike anything else in the solar system, a massive perfectly symmetrical hexagon, thousands of kilometers across. It doesn't drift. It doesn't twist. It doesn't fade. Its shape is razor-sharp, as though drawn with a ruler. Cassini had been photographing it since it arrived, but in 2013, the spacecraft passed close enough to peer beneath the clouds using deep infrared imaging. What it saw shouldn't have been possible. Beneath the roiling clouds was a thermal pattern, concentric rings connected by radial lines, like the spokes of a giant wheel. Stranger still, the very center of the hexagon was pulsing with heat, regular, perfectly timed bursts every 13 minutes. No known atmospheric process behaves like that. Inside NASA, some began calling it the clock. And then there was Cassini's end. September 15, 2017. The spacecraft was directed into Saturn's atmosphere to burn up, a precaution to avoid contaminating moons like Enceladus or Titan that might harbor life. It was supposed to disintegrate in less than a minute. Instead, it transmitted for 30 seconds longer than expected. In that brief extra time, its instruments recorded a sudden, dramatic drop in pressure, like entering a hollow space within the atmosphere. Radiation levels spiked, then fell again. For a moment, Cassini wasn't falling. It was hovering. Then the signal vanished. Later analysis revealed that the atmospheric density at that depth didn't match earlier models, it was far too thin. One internal memo simply read, "Cassini went deeper than we expected, and something was waiting." In its final months, Cassini began a series of daring dives between Saturn and its innermost rings, a region no spacecraft had ever entered. During these passes, its high-resolution cameras recorded tiny ripples in the D-ring particles. They were symmetrical, echoing the spacecraft's trajectory. But here's the strange part. The ripples appeared seconds before Cassini reached them, as if the rings somehow anticipated its presence. Magnetometer data picked up a faint oscillating signal, matching the pattern of the ripples exactly. Some called it the ripple code. Others whispered a simpler explanation, a warning. Cassini's years orbiting Titan revealed a world as alien as any in science fiction. Shrouded in a thick orange atmosphere, Titan hides seas of liquid methane, massive dunes, and rugged mountain ranges. In 2014, Cassini's radar scanned the Moon's southern hemisphere and picked up something strange, moving shadows. They weren't clouds. These shapes moved against the wind, maintaining their form, traveling at about 11 kilometers per hour. One shape tracked across 3 consecutive frames, altered course near a highland region, then resumed its original path. They left no heat signature, no elevation changes, nothing but their presence in the radar image. NASA's official stance is that they were data artifacts. Mission logs call them something else, mobile occlusions of unknown nature. While reviewing plasma wave data from Cassini's ring dives, engineers found another anomaly. On 3 separate occasions, the spacecraft recorded an ultra-low frequency radio signal lasting exactly 42 seconds, repeating every 19 hours. Its waveform was structured, part natural sine wave, part something else, something that looked engineered. The signal didn't come from Saturn or any moon. It came from the empty space between the rings. On Cassini's final pass, the signal appeared again, but this time it stopped mid-pulse, abruptly, as if interrupted. Then there was the image that was never meant to survive. During the 17th ring dive, a set of high-resolution frames was flagged for deletion to free up memory. But a compressed memory dump recovered them later. One of the images showed a smooth, curved object in silhouette above the rings. It was metallic in appearance, featureless, but it reflected light like a manufactured surface. In the next 2 frames, it had moved. Even more unsettling, Cassini's onboard camera systems had adjusted its angle automatically, without human command, to focus on the object. An autonomous subroutine had flagged a brightness change as an anomaly, and turned the camera toward it. Those images were never released in full resolution. Cassini was launched to map storms, rings, and moons, things we thought we understood. But over time, the patterns it found became too perfect. The shadows became too deliberate. The signals too structured. And perhaps, most disturbing of all, the silences between transmissions began to feel like answers we weren't ready to hear. Its fiery end wasn't just to prevent contamination, it was containment. Because sometimes, the most dangerous thing a spacecraft can do is see too much. If this changes the way you see Saturn, Subscribe to Discovery at 2.0 as we pull the curtain back even further. And tell us, were Cassini's final images hidden because they threatened science? Or because they revealed something far older than science itself?